country as a region, even down to a local level.
The whole work from home concept, how has that affected your business? Of course, you mentioned you, like I, before the pandemic, spent a lot of your time on airplanes traveling to see customers. You can't do that anymore. Often companies don't even have you go into the office. I read somewhere that close to 50% of all people during this pandemic are working from home. And if you see the highways during rush hour traffic, I don't think that number is far off. How does that affect the way you do business and the products that you sell?
Yeah, great question. And I've actually worked from home technically since I've graduated college for this company. I've been with them. It'll be 9 years in February. But so I was used to the working from home mentality. What has changed drastically for me was the travel. I flew, I think 92 times in 2019 for business purposes, for personal reasons, fun, you name it. I didn't jump on a flight. My last flight was March 11th coming back from DC. And I knew there was going to be an issue because when I flew out of Reagan, there was nobody in the airport on March 11th, in our nation's capital. And that was deeply concerning to me. And then that next week, mostly everything got shut down, but I've flown twice since then. I had a flight in September. I went out to Denver to visit my brother for a week. And, my thought process on that was, if I fly out there and I'm not feeling well, I know I can at least stay there and quarantine at his place before I came back, drove home. I could be flexible. Luckily, nothing happened. I felt safe during flying, which was good. I flew in October, beginning of October for business, went down to Orlando, felt safe flying again. Nothing didn't come down with anything. Everything was fine. But I'm tired of Zoom calls. I'm tired of Teams calls, virtual calls, but it's the reality right now. I mean, just this past week was the definition of 2020 for me. I was supposed to fly to Atlanta Sunday night for work. I was supposed to fly Wednesday night to Tampa for a work meeting, and then I was actually going to stay through the weekend because I had a good friend of mine that was getting married Friday in a very, very small deal on the beach in Tampa. And it's like, oh, I can make it work. I'll be down there. Well, my meetings in Atlanta got canceled because of COVID. There was an outbreak with the group we were going to present with. And then I found out on a personal level that I had some family members come down with it as well last Saturday. So it was kind of a blessing in disguise. It wasn't on me that I had to cancel it. It was, the customers pulled the plug before I had to. But this last week has been interesting, and the really the definition of 2020 the past few days.
Yeah.
So.
Well, the whole travel thing, and you mentioned the airports. I've traveled a handful of times too since this pandemic, and the getting to the airport and the airport itself, which are virtually deserted, the airplanes themselves, which aren't very crowded. And if you fly Southwest, you've got that middle seat open anyway. The travel, the getting from point A to point B and back, that wasn't the issue. The issue was everything else. The finding a place to eat, the convincing enough people to see you to make the trip worthwhile, just the whole logistics of everything. You're in the hotel, okay, fine. Oh, by the way, not only do we not serve breakfast, but no restaurants in the area are open until 8 o'clock in the morning. And we don't even serve coffee in our restaurant because of COVID-19. So that was the hard part for me.
Yeah.
Not the travel so much, but just surviving on the road.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. Yeah, you don't know where to eat, where to go. And I will say my trip to Orlando was interesting for a couple of reasons. You hear on the news, the mainstream media, Florida isn't doing this, Florida isn't doing that. They're a high risk area, this and that. I'll be honest with you, James. I land in Orlando and I'm expecting, no masks and this and that. Even outside the airport, everybody had a mask on.
Yeah.
I would be at the gas station and I was just like, holy cow. I was taken back. But the funny part is on my way back, I had to connect through Houston Hobby, and I'm sitting in the terminal. I had gotten to the airport early, and I had my flight, the flight schedules have been greatly diminished, so you don't have as many options. So
right.
My meetings finished early. I got to the airport early. And I'm sitting there, and it's about 5:00. It's like, I need to go grab some dinner. So I'm walking around the airport, and more than half the stuff in the airport's closed.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I find a Chick-fil-A. So I go, oh, perfect. I like Chick-fil-A. I'll get myself a sandwich and some fries and have some dinner. Well, the airport's taken out all the tables. So there's nowhere to sit at a table and eat.
Yeah.
And there was like 4 tables I saw, and all of them had a person at them. So there's no way I could sit there, whatever, can't share it with them.
Right.
It's like, okay, I guess I got to go eat at the gate. So I go to the gate closest to the Chick-fil-A restaurant. I'm sitting in my seat. I've got my food on the seat next to me. God only knows who sat in that, what was on that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm eating my sandwich, and I hear over the intercom the gate agent play Governor Abbott's mask mandate that he's implemented for the state of Texas. And friendly reminder, Governor Abbott has released a mask mandate, and goes through the procedural statement that's written on paper. And I'm eating my sandwich, and I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. I'm eating. I got to have my mask off to eat, clearly. And I'm getting towards the end of my meal, and the gate agent walks over to me, and he pulls his mask down. He's like, sir, you got to put your mask on. And I look up at him. I go, I'm eating. And he looks back at me, and he goes, you have to put it on in between each bite. And I look up, I go, kick rocks. And I'm just like, you gotta be kidding me. Yeah. I purposely sat away from people, and he specifically called me out using the intercom and then walked over. And I'm just like, you gotta be kidding me right now. And the irony is, he had on what they call one of those gator masks.
Yeah, the ones that many people say are no good.
Exactly. So that was the funny thing about it. I'm just like, you got to be kidding me right now. So I finished my meal, and it wasn't my gate that I was flying out of. So I finished my meal. There was a trash can to his left, and I walked up and I dunked it as if I was, LeBron James, and I just stared at him the entire time and walked away. But and I am not an anti-masker. I am overly cautious.
Me neither. I am overly cautious 100%. Of anything.
Yeah.
But sometimes they get ridiculous. My example of the ridiculous was in Nevada. Last month, early October, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to get out. And so I flew to Death Valley, and I camped out there for a week. And that's the ultimate social distancing vacation. It was only me. I flew out direct flight to Las Vegas, middle seats open. I got on the shuttle, which was almost deserted. Got to the rental car place, got my car, picked up my supplies, and I drove out to the desert. And I wasn't within 15 feet of anybody for a week. But then when I'm done out in the desert, I go back to Las Vegas. I spend one night in Las Vegas, get a meal, sleep in a real bed, fly home. Things are so strict out in Las Vegas where you have to wear a mask all the time, unless you're at a table eating, and you don't have to put it on between bites, by the way. But even in October, the temperature was in the 90s. I got a nice room at the Tropicana, and I went to the pool to just relax and take it easy. And there's a sign that says you must have a mask on while at the pool unless you're physically swimming. And the pool, there weren't many people on it. I was sitting in a lounge chair by myself. There was nobody within 25 feet of me. Mm-hmm. And there were signs reminding me that you have to have a mask on. I didn't put it on. That to me, that was ridiculous. Walking on the Strip, you have to wear a mask. And again, that was ridiculous. Now, when I got up to a corner where you had to wait for a light and there were people around you, I took it off my ear and I put it back on. Because I was within 6 feet of people. But if you're outside 20 feet from the nearest individual, there's no need to have a mask on. That's just being ridiculous.
Yeah.
By the same token, I was in a Lowe's at the early part of this pandemic where they suggested you wear a mask, but you didn't have to. Probably 80% of the people were wearing a mask. And there was a fella who, not only was he not wearing a mask in the store, but he was chewing tobacco, and he spit his tobacco on the floor of the store.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I'm thinking to myself, I get it. You don't want to wear a mask, but please don't spit in public. That's disgusting if there's no pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
So you get both ends of the dopey spectrum.
Yeah. I saw it firsthand. You see these videos online of, people going irate in stores because they have to wear a mask, this and that, fights even breaking out. I not to that extent, but my first kind of run in of somebody, defying that and verbally not wanting to do it. I went to Menards, last week sometime. And I walk in the store and there's a gentleman, older gentleman, probably 65, had somebody with him. I'm guessing his son or somebody. And he's yelling at the customer service lady. And I had to return something, and I'm kind of eavesdropping. And it was because he had to wear a mask. And he's like, I'm never going to shop here again, and this and that. And I'm just sitting there like, you got to be kidding me right now.
Yeah.
Like, how simple is it? Put a mask on. Even if you're healthy, you're fine. You don't feel a threat. That's great. But you got to think of everybody else.
You do.
And that's what, you have to think of others. And I think it's a good wake up call for everybody. And I've learned it this past week, being a part of a diversity group at work that I'm leading. It was brought up on one of our calls that, what happened to checking on your neighbor and, treating your neighbor as though you want to be treated. And I'm just like, bingo, like that's what this is all about.
Mm-hmm.
You have people stuck in their homes. Call your neighbor. Call 2 people today that you haven't talked to in a while and just check in on them. That's, little stuff like that. I think we got to get back to.
I've been doing a bit more of that. And while it's the human thing to do, it also helps you.
Yeah.
It does. I will say this though, that we tell our horror stories of the knotheads that are out there, but the vast majority of people during this whole pandemic mess I've seen have been patient, they've been prudent, and they've been respectful. And that to me makes me smile, because you're always going to have the knotheads, but the vast majority of people, even the people that okay, I know people who they think the mask is a joke. They think that it's not a pandemic, it's a scandemic. But they still wear the mask because what? That's kind of what we do. And I respect those people.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's a touchy subject. And I think it's just, I don't know. It's interesting. I mean, we're going to get through it. Everything, things will be fine. We're going to look back, a year, 2, 3 years from now and say, remember when? Yeah. And we're all going to be, for the most part, most of us are going to be fine. And it's a matter of, not taking it for granted. And when we look back 15 years from now and something else pops up and we can all say, well, we experienced this, we learned from it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's do this so we don't turn out like that again.
I hope you're right.
So
we can be optimistic. Right now we're going into the cold part of the season, the holiday season, where the silver lining to the dark cloud, the days are getting shorter. The weather's getting colder. We can't go outside and do things. But you know what? We get time off of work and we get to see our family. Well, maybe not because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
So
you're going to learn to appreciate things you've never really appreciated or maybe you've taken for granted. And I think that's happened to a lot of folks. And, I'm paying attention more to, the birds that are flying outside and, what they're doing, little stuff like that kind of puts you back in place and makes you appreciate things.
I think we have to. This past week, we had a couple of days in the 70s, or at least one day in the 70s. Yeah. And not only did we turn off our furnace, but I slept with the window cracked. And I got to listen to, of course, no crickets. It's this time of year, but I could listen to the wind blowing, the leaves rustling, the cars and trucks. You could hear them in the distance going down the highway. Just the sounds of life, other than just having your house all cooped up, almost like springtime. So that made me smile. Just the little things. The little things are helpful.
I had a really good experience early on in this pandemic. When we were on lockdown, everybody was scared. You were scared to even take a foot up, take a step outside. You went to the grocery store and that was it.
Right.
And